So I'd like to apologize early on that I don't have any visual aids. Just kind of wanted to talk about Venus a little bit and get it out there, which meant I did not have the time to sit before I thought about it. So anyway, let's just talk about Venus and how your season has taught you to love. Because if your sun sign is how you survive, your developmental assignment, where you're growing towards, kind of see your Venus sign is how you want. Most people know their sun sign. A growing number of people are starting to know their moon sign. But if you've ever been in a relationship that looked right on paper and felt wrong in your body, or maybe have felt right in your body and did not look the same way to everyone around you, the planet you may need to understand is Venus. You see, Venus is the part of your chart that encodes desire, not just romantic desire, though that's where most people feel it at first. Venus maps what you find beautiful, what you're drawn toward without being able to explain why, what you choose if no one was watching and nothing practical was at stake. Whereas your sun sign, it can describe the survival strategy the season has assigned you. And your moon sign, I see it as describing what your nervous system needs to feel safe. So your Venus sign, I think it describes what your heart reaches for when it is. And I think that's what makes Venus so disorienting because it doesn't have to match anything, by the way, to anything else in your chart. You can be a Capricorn sun, structured, ambitious, disciplined, but have your behind a Venus and Pisces reaching for love that has no edges, no contracts, no floor beneath it. You could be a Cancer sun, nurturing, protective, emotionally fluent, with a Venus in Aquarius, wanting connection that feels more like intellectual architecture than a warm embrace. See, the sun and moon, it often can make sense together, even when they're in tension, right? But Venus is the placement that makes you say, why the heck am I like this? About the people you want, the art that moves you, the rooms you walk into, and immediately feel something shift in your chest. So the seasonal framework, it reads Venus through the same logic it reads everything else. The sign Venus occupies tells you which season strategies shaped your desire nature. Not because Venus was literally molded by weather conditions on the day you were born, because the zodiac maps each phase of the solar cycle onto a specific way of relating to the world. And Venus, it adopts the relational logic of whatever phase it landed in. See, the season, it doesn't call your love style, but I think it names it. And the naming is what makes it useful because once you can see the pattern clearly, you can stop trying to want differently and start understanding what you actually want and why it keeps showing up the way it does. What follows is Venus through all 12 signs. Not as a list of compatible matches, not as a personality quiz, but as a map of 12 fundamentally different answers to the question, what does love feel like when it's real? Venus and Aries. So this is mine. And the grass is just stalled. The first green thing pushes through. Everything is new and everything is now. You see, Venus and Aries, it loves like spring's first day, sudden, direct, and almost aggressive in its honesty. If you have this placement, girl, you already know. We don't ease into attraction. It just hits us, okay? The room shifts. I don't know why I sound like that when it hits us. But someone walks in and your whole system reorganizes around them before you've even finished your drink, okay? There's a quality of pursuit baked in your desire nature that you can't turn off even when you try. You want what you want and you want it almost immediately. And the distance between noticing someone and doing something about that is almost non-existent. This is the Venus that sends the text first. That says the thing out loud while everyone else is still circling. That shows up with a kind of breathless urgency that can feel to the people on the receiving end like being chose by a force of nature. And that's the gift of it. No one who is loved by Venus and Aries has to wonder if they're wanted. We make it unmistakable. But the season that encodes this Venus is the season of beginning, not sustaining. And see, early spring, it doesn't know how to maintain what it starts all the time. It knows how to burst through frozen ground now. It knows how to be first, let me tell you. But it doesn't know what to do on a Tuesday in November when the relationship has been going for 2 years and the charge, is just kind of settled and changed into something quieter. And the challenge isn't that you can't sustain love. It's that the early spring logic reads the absence of intensity as the absence of love itself. If it doesn't feel like the first night, is it still real? It's kind of the question our Venus keeps asking. And you know what? The answer is yes. But our nervous system has to learn that through experience because the seasonal logic encoded in our desire nature has no framework for the quiet version. So what this kind of can mean day to day is that we thrive in relationships that have ongoing sparks of newness, not because we're incapable of depth, but because our Venus literally metabolizes love as energy, motion, and aliveness. Partners who challenge us, who don't collapse into predictability, who occasionally surprise us with their own force, those are the ones who keeps our attention. Not because we're shallow, but because early spring only knows one language, and child, that language is alive. 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 I don't know where I read it like that, but alive. Venus and Taurus. See, the green thing that pushed to the ground in Aries has now taken root, and the air is warmer. The body can finally rest outside and feel held by the world instead of bracing up against it, right? So, Venus and Taurus, it often described as the strongest Venus placement because Taurus is one of Venus' home signs. And there's some truth in that. But the reason isn't strong, it's mystical. It isn't mystical, it's strong. Architectural, I guess you would say. I'm trying to find my right words here, but mid-spring is the part of the seasonal cycle where the environment finally supports staying. This is where we find the urgency of early spring has passed, where the ground is now stable, where things can grow slowly now, and what grows slowly tends to grow deep. So your desired nature, it absorbed that logic completely, and you love through presence, consistency, and the body. So if you have Venus and Taurus, you've probably noticed that your experience of love is intensely physical, not just sexual, although often that too, but sensory in a way that goes beyond what the culture usually means by physical attraction. The right voice, it can probably undo you, child. A specific texture up against your skin, the smell of someone's jacket, the weight of a hand on the back of your neck. Because it's your Venus, it just doesn't process love as an idea or a conversation first. It processes love as a felt, material, bodily experience. And you know you love someone because your body tells you so. And your body is rarely wrong about it. So the gift of this placement is loyalty that doesn't perform itself. Venus in Taurus doesn't announce devotion, it demonstrates it through years of showing up, through remembering how you take your coffee, through building a physical world that says you are held here. But the shadow is equally rooted in the season's logic, you see, because mid spring, it holds what it has. It digs in, it resists being moved, where we get the stubborn connotation for Taurus, which means your Venus can hold into relationships, people, patterns of desire long past the point where they serve you, not because you don't see the truth, but because your desire nature, it experiences letting go as a death. And the ground, it doesn't voluntarily uproot what's is growing. You have to be pulled away, and that pulling can be brutal. So, what this kind of can mean for y'all day to day is that you need love you can touch. Abstract declarations, long distance promises, relationships that live primarily in text messages, those will starve your Venus, okay? It needs that meal cooked together, the body next to yours, the shared physical space that becomes a container for everything else. Because when you feel disconnected in a relationship, the answer is almost always to re enter the body, not to talk more, but to touch more, to sit in the same room and let that presence do what it be doing, baby. For a nervous system that's encoded with mid spring logic, prove that something real is here and that is not going anywhere. Venus and Gemini. So the season for this one has opened wide. There's blossoms everywhere, pollen moving between the flowers, the air, it carries things, no seeds, sound. Everything is connecting with everything else because Venus and Gemini loves through language, through curiosity, through the electric, irreplaceable experience of discovering that another person's mind surprises you. That was supposed to be a light bulb. If you have this placement, you may have been called flirtatious your entire life, and the world has just never been quite right because what people read as flirtation is actually something more fundamental. Your desire nature is wired for connection through exchange. You're not performing charm, you're actually genuinely interested. You want to know what they think, how they see it, what they noticed that you didn't. And that wanting, that bright, restless, endlessly curious wanting, it looks like flirtation from the outside because the culture doesn't have a better word for someone's whose lights light up, who eyes light up when a conversation gets interesting. And see, late spring is a season of pollination. When everything that has been growing in isolation starts reaching toward everything else. So the logic encoded in your Venus is the logic of cross pollination. Love happens when two different things connect and something new is created in the exchange for y'all. This means your desire nature doesn't thrive really on sameness, it more so thrives on difference. The partner who always agrees with you, who's gonna be marrying you perfectly, and that's what it's gonna be for y'all. Who never introduces a thought that you haven't already had, they are gonna bore your Venus is gonna be to death, okay? No matter how kind or stable or attractive, they could be as cute as they wanna be, okay? But you need the friction of two different minds meeting. The spark isn't physical first, it's intellectual. And the challenge, y'all already know this already because just like my brain be moving ahead of my mouth, y'all brains be moving ahead of everything else too. This is the same logic that makes you brilliant at connection. It makes you restless inside the commitment, not because you're unfaithful by nature, but because late spring doesn't stay with one flower. The season's entire purpose is to spread, diversify, and to multiply connections. In your Venus, it carries that encoding. And in a monogamous culture that treats sustained singular focus as the only valid expression of love, you can feel like something is wrong with your wiring. But baby boo, nothing's wrong with their freaking wiring. But you do need to build relationships that have internal just differences. Enough room for conversation to keep evolving, for both people to keep surprising each other. That that is what the late spring logic won't read that stability as stagnation. And so what this kind of can mean for day to day is you got to talk to each other, not logistics, not scheduling, but talking, sharing an article that made you think differently, disagreeing about something and enjoying the disagreement. Like y'all would enjoy a devil advocate conversation. It probably spark you right up. Let the conversation, let the relationship be a conversation that is just something that's never finished. Because the moment the talking stops being interesting, your Venus is looking, baby, for the next interesting thing. Not out of cruelty, but out of the deep season encoded need to keep that exchange alive. Venus in Cancer. So, Venus in Cancer is when the summer arrives and the air is heavy and warm. Everything is alive and is growing, and the instinct shifts from reaching outward to drawing inward, to building the nest, to protecting what's created. Because Venus in Cancer, it loves like early summer, deeply, protectively, and with a memory that never lets go of what it once held. If you have this placement, love is not an event for you. No, baby boo. It's an environment. You don't fall in love with a person so much, like, as you can. You'll create an emotional world around them, is what I'm trying to say. You'll make a world around them that's made of inside jokes, shared meals, remembered conversations, the specific way you learn to hold each other at 2 a.m. when one of you couldn't sleep. Your love is a place. And once someone has been inside of it, you carry the shape of them forever, even if they leave. Because this is the early summer season. That's the season of nesting where growth has happened. And now the task is to protect it, feed it, keep it alive through warmth and sustained attention. In your Venus, it absorbed this logic so thoroughly that your entire approach to desire operates through care. You don't pursue people the way Aries Venus does, all right? You don't dazzle them the way a Gemini Venus does. You feed them. You remember what they said 3 weeks ago and you bring it back at exactly the right moment. You notice when they're tired before they do. You anticipate needs so quietly that people sometimes don't realize how much you've been holding until you stop. Because the shadow here, it lives in the same place as the gift. The season that encodes your Venus is a season of protection. And protection can be controlled when it's driven by fear. Because if you're thinking like, if I take care of everything, they can't leave. If I make myself indispensable, I'm safe. This isn't really manipulation. It's the survival logic of a season that knows things die when they're not tended. But love isn't a garden that dies the moment you stop watering. That's the difference. And your Venus sometimes it needs to learn that other people can survive without your care and that their independence is not a rejection of what you've built. This is why we call Cancer the sign of the mother, right? Because these are stereotypes that are often not even necessarily stereotypes, but archetypes that are naturally attributed to the mother. This is why they say a mother gets jealous if her son becomes with someone else. Not necessarily because there is some type of romantic connection there. 8% of the time, that is not the case. 98% of the time, that stems from the fact because they've cared and nurtured this soul their entire lives. And sometimes that independence can feel like a rejection of what you have built for them. but that's not necessarily the case. And so, what this means day to day for you, Cancer and Venus, is you need to feel safe before you can feel desire. For many Venus and Cancer people, the order is reversed from what the culture presents as normal, right? The culture says attraction comes first, then trust develop. For you, the trust comes first. You open slowly, carefully, testing the water with one toe before you step in. And once you're in, you're in. But the getting in, that takes time. That impatient partner sometimes misread as disinterest. And it's not disinterest, it's the early summer logic doing exactly what it's designed to do, making sure the environment can hold what you're about to pour into it. Venus and Leo. High summer. See, the sun is at its peak. Everything fully expressed, fully visible, nothing held back. The garden isn't growing anymore, it's displaying. That's because Venus and Leo, it loves with the whole chest. If you got this placement, you already know that half measures, they feel like lies to your desire nature. You are not the one to do some quiet affection. You do declarations. You do the surprise trip, the handwritten letter, the look across the room that says, you are the most important person here, and I'm going to need everybody to know it, okay? Your love, it is a performance, but not in the sense of being fake, but in the original, sacred sense of the word. To perform is to bring fully into being, right? And that's because when you love someone, you bring that love fully into the visible world and you refuse to let it stay internal and unwitnessed. And that is because midsummer is a season of maximum expression. This is when the sun is directly overhead, right? Everything that has been growing is now fully on display. And the logic encoded in your Venus is the logic of generous, unapologetic radiance. Love should be seen. Love should be celebrated. Love should make you feel not just safe or comfortable, but magnificent. And you want to be adored and you want to adore. And I don't think any of those desires are shallow. Honestly, the Venus and Aries is feeling it, okay? They're the midsummer season's way of saying that life at its fullest life is most expressive. I never can talk when I get sidetracked. But the wound attached to this placement is predictable and devastating. Because if your love is a performance, then an audience that doesn't show up, it feels like a negation almost of the love itself. Because Venus and Leo, it can become desperate for validation. Reading a partner's distraction as more rejection, interpreting a lack of verbal phrase as evidence that the love is dying. May feel like you used to look at me like that, man. You used to say it. Why don't you say it anymore? The need to be witnessed is not vanity. It's the midsummer logic doing what it does, equating visibility with existence. You see, when you feel unseen, you don't just feel unloved, you feel like you're disappearing. And what this can kind of mean for day to day is you need more of a partner who's willing to be expressive, stoic, that withholding the love you, but I don't need to say it types. They're gonna leave your Venus starving in a way that no amount of stability can fix. Now, this doesn't mean you need some constant flattery or a constant someone kissing your behind. It means you need someone who understands that for you, love that isn't expressed doesn't fully exist. And who is willing to meet that need with their own version of showing up loudly enough for you to feel it? Venus and Virgo. So this is where the season turns, right? The heat is beginning to break. The harvest is starting to start. What grew wild all summer is now being sorted, evaluated, and separated into what's useful and what isn't. See, Venus and Virgo is the sign that loves through attention to detail, through service, through the quiet, unglamorous act of noticing what needs to be done and doing it without being asked. So if you have this placement, you've probably felt misunderstood your entire romantic life because the culture's definition of love, right? Grand gestures, verbal declarations, passionate intensity. It doesn't really match how your desire, like nature, actually operates. Because Virgos, y'all ain't the Virgo, Venus and Virgos. Y'all not the type to about to be to say "I love you" with words first. No, you're gonna say it by remembering that their prescription needs to be refilled. Now that is some real love. By fixing the thing that was broken, by reorganizing the closet because you noticed it was stressing them out. Because your love is the type that speaks in acts so small that most people don't recognize them as love at all. And this is because late summer is the season of the harvest, the moment when everything that grew has to be sorted, refined, and made useful. So, this logic encoded in your Venus is the logic of improvement through care. Kind of like, I love you, so I see you clearly, including the parts that could be better. And I want to help you get there because this is the placement's greatest gift. And honestly, is most misunderstood quality. Because when Venus in Virgo offers a suggestion, notices a flaw, gently points out something that could be improved, it's not criticism. It's the harvest logic expressing love in the only language it has. That I see you clearly enough to see what could be better, and I care enough to say it. But you already know how this lands, because in a culture that equates love with unconditional acceptance and treats any form of evaluation as rejection, your Venus's natural love language gets read as judgment more often. Partners hear you, and they hear you could do this differently, or they'll hear and feel you're not good enough. And over time, a lot of Venus and Virgo people, they'll learn how to suppress their most natural form of intimacy, where they're being the clear-eyed, helpful, improvement-oriented seeing, because they've been told that it isn't loving. It is. It's just love spoken in the language of late summer, and not everyone knows how to hear it. So what this can kind of mean for your day to day is that you need to feel useful or be useful to the people you love. And you need that usefulness to be noticed and valued, not with some fanfare that would embarrass you, but with quiet acknowledgement. And see, the partner who says, I saw what you did and it mattered is the partner who makes your Venus feel meat. It'll make you feel weak at the knees. You also need a relationship where clear eyed honesty isn't treated as an attack. The worst pairing, I think, for your Venus isn't someone who's different from you, but is someone who can't tolerate actually being seen accurately. That'll make them feel personally attacked, okay? Like, I really think it would. But I will be back to finish the last, what I got 6 signs, 5 signs? Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. So the last 6 signs, I'll be back after my work meeting and after my shift. I have a shift after my work meeting, and I will record the rest of the signs and talk about the Venuses. This has been fun. Be back.